Afternoon guys, we are back with our first video of the year. So today we're going to go into a bit more detail about the Nissan, the rusty piece of shit that is no longer rusty because we cut it all out. So you've seen from the video that it is a Nissan S14. It initially came in for some tube work on the front end, pair of manifolds, a couple of little bits. It wasn't anything major. I went round the roll cage with the customer. I'm like, look, this isn't great. There was a lot of miswelds, you know, tubes not being straight, etc., etc. So we came to the agreement that we're going to cut it out. Whilst I was cutting it out, we discovered a lot of rust. You know, it's an old Nissan, it's an old Japanese car, it's rotten. So the customer said to me, cut all the rust out. He said, I don't care how far you got to go, cut it all out. So we've ended up with no floor pan, no inner rear quarters, no firewall, no nothing. Now, what we've actually done now is turned it into a tube chassis, which is great, but it's not the best way to do it. So in this scenario, the way that you would set something like this up is you'd have the body on its own and then you build the chassis from that. What we actually did is we started with inside of the car, making the roll cage, and then realised there was a lot of rust and we cut it all out. So we had to sort of double back on ourselves a little bit. It's not ideal, but now we've made it right. So it's not set up like it at the moment, but in our old shop, just before we moved, we have a laser line that sits in the centre of the chassis table here. It's a big 5-ton surface table, and we set our centre lines up for the car. This allows us to have accurate measurements for everything. So we've got the motor, the trans, the rear end, everything is dead centre, dead in line, and we work that out from the squareness of the table. I think our table's accurate to within half a mil, over 8 feet. It's pretty accurate, especially for what we're doing. So we started off by mocking up the motor and the trans and the mid plate and the front plate. That then gives us our base to work from. Now in a drag build, it's very different. You start from the rear cross member, but in this scenario, we actually started with the motor because we had to build it within the constraints of the original floor pan. So you can see we've got a mock-up block in it. It's a GM LS3 block. It's quite common. We do quite a lot of them. That's mocked up in there. The transmission's a Tremec, it's either a T6060 or T56. I can't remember off the top of my head. So now that's all mocked up. We've got the front motor plate, the mid plate is in, and you can see the firewall area has now been replaced with tubes. What this does, we've taken this from drag racing. So the way that drag, you know, specifically Pro Mods and a lot of the smaller cars are set out is the motor and the trans is mounted directly to the chassis. There's no rubber mounts, there's no give, there's no flex. And what that means is that when you launch, it puts all of the power into the chassis rather than just trying to twist the rubber mounts. So this is a bit of a combination because this car was a drift car. It's now not. He's not really interested in that anymore. He's actually going to enter time attack in the outlaw class, I believe. So we've taken different setups from many different sort of disciplines of motorsport to make this car what it is now. So at the moment, the body's sat on it. Initially, we were going to make it removable body, but because it's a steel body and it's a road car, so you're never going to get it waterproof. So the body is now going to stay on. We'll close it all in, make it all waterproof. But the main part of it is it all centres for us in this situation with this particular car. Everything centres around the motor. We've actually moved the motor back 4.5 inches from the stock S14 location. This gives us a better centre of gravity, a lot more space up front for what's going to be a big pair of twin turbos. So, let's say it's an LS3 V8. We're actually building the engine with an RHS block. So it's aluminium block, but it's got ductile iron liners. So it can take about 1,500 horsepower, maybe a little bit more, which for a time attack car is pretty insane. Obviously there's a lot of aero to go on it and stuff, but right now we're focusing on all the tube work. So next up for us is we'll tube in the front end. That will then pick up all the bumper supports. It will pick up the wings, the headlights, the bonnet, etc., etc. That would be effectively your slam panel in a factory road car. But this car's all going to be tube work, the front end's all going to be quick release. And not only that, it gives us a decent pickup for our aero in the front because anything, say, over 100 mile an hour, aero can actually add between 100 and 250 kilos of downforce to the front of it. It's quite a lot of weight right over the nose of the car, so it all needs to be quite strong and it has to tie into the chassis. You imagine something like that brakes at that kind of speed, it's going to get pretty messy. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with it. We've obviously taken the suspension turrets, we made a jig from the factory car before we stripped it down, and then when we build the car up we use that jig and that tells us where the top mounts both sides are. That allows us to get it. It's not the most accurate way of doing it, but because we're using the stock Nissan setup rather than our own or a strange setup like that, it makes it very, very close to what it should be. Now, the way that we designed the top mounts is so they are adjustable, so that, you know, you might find when we do the alignment on it that one side's got a little bit more camber than the other, but we've allowed for that so we can adjust it in situ. It's not the end of the world. This is going to be quite a powerful car. I think our aim is 1,000 horsepower at the rear wheels. So it's going to make some noise. Twin turbo, and obviously, yes, we've generated loads of room at the front, but in this particular setup, we're actually going to run the radiator in the rear of the car. Now, if you're familiar with the S14, you've probably seen a lot of people do this, a lot of drifters. It's mostly so that when they hit the fucking wall, they don't trash the front of it. We're actually doing it for weight, to keep all the weight of the rear of the car. Because it's rear-wheel drive, we want to be able to actually get some traction, because we're not running big drag slicks on this. You know, we're going to run 18 by 10s or 11s. That's not a very big tyre for that kind of horsepower. So, obviously, it's hard for you as a viewer to understand how it's going to look, but we've designed it all. It's all planned out. We know exactly where it's going. So hopefully over the course of the next few months, we start doing more videos on this particular one, you'll start seeing where all of this baseline starts and enables us to move forward from that point. There's a lot of stuff in this that is unconventional. For instance, we've used the motor plate, as I said, from drag racing, but the rear end is still an independent suspension setup taken from the Nissan. We are going to put a Winters rear diff in it because they take the power, whereas the stock ones are made of fucking chocolate. But yeah, it's a pretty mental thing, and it's taken us a while to get it to this point because we've worked forwards 4 or 5 steps, and then we've had to take a few steps back to get to this point, you know, cutting all the rust out and stuff. And it's not just the case of cut the floor pan out. You actually have to take a lot of measurements. You know, the floor pan itself that was in there before, is it straight? Is it square? Is it level? The factory frame rails are another important thing. On this car, they were actually 3/4 of an inch out over 4 feet, which is quite a lot for a factory car. But again, it's old, it's Japanese, and it was rusty as fuck. So it's all gone now. It's all now been replaced with ROPT 510 tube, which is a proprietary steel that we buy from a company called Performance Metals. It actually comes with its own data sheets so that we've got traceability for the material. So if there's ever a failure or an accident, we can actually look at the spec sheets for the steel, when it was made, the test that it passed. A lot of people for roll cages will just use CDS, cold drawn steel. It's seamless, it's absolutely fine for roll cages. We prefer to use the ROPT 510. It's got better elasticity, and it's just a nicer tube to work with overall. So every single piece of tube in this car is ROPT. Yeah, I say a lot because there's a lot of shit in this car that I'm trying to portray to you guys watching this, who are, you know, might not necessarily work in a garage or even in the automotive scene. You might be like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? He's speaking French. I'm trying to explain it enough to you so that you can understand it, so that when you watch these videos, you come away with an understanding of why stuff is done like this, how we do it. Am I the most intelligent chassis builder? Fucking absolutely not. Am I the best in the world? Absolutely fucking not. There are far better people out there than me, but I've learnt from them. Some of the guys that have helped me and taught me, you know, especially in America, and a few guys from the UK, like Luke Robinson for one, very, very clever, very, very skilled chassis builder. I take my advice from them. So we don't just make it up as we go along. There is a plan to everything. And the other thing is, sometimes we get shit wrong. We're human at the end of the day. You know, we'll make a tube and it doesn't fit. Or we'll put a tube in, we'll weld it, and then another part doesn't fit. You know, the seat doesn't quite clear, or the customer wants to run a different gearbox, and then we have to cut things apart. Shit happens. We fuck shit up. That's the fact of it. We are real people, and we make mistakes. So you'll see when you follow along with these videos, if you pay enough attention, sometimes you'll see something fucked up. You can see in the background behind me the VW Lupo that was done and running at the tail end of last year. It's back in because it's got an issue. It's not from lack of experience, it's not from lack of knowledge, it's just something that happens. So we bring it back in, we repair it. Stuff like this, it's a jigsaw puzzle, except there's no picture, there's no corners, and there's no sides. So you have to start from the middle and work your way out. What I don't think a lot of people fully understand when it comes to tube stuff and roll cages is that you can put a tube in here now, and in 3 months' time when you come to finish the car, that tube might be in the wrong place. Then you have to cut it out and do it all over again. So there's actually a lot of design and testing and drawing that goes into something like this to make sure that everything you do works and that you don't have to cut it back out. Do we get it wrong? Absolutely. Do we fix it? Fucking right we do. I love what I do, and if you follow my social media, particularly Instagram, I say fuck a lot and shit and motherfucker. And I'm telling you now, if you don't like those words, you probably don't want to watch these videos because I say them a lot. If you follow it, and you probably saw the last post, I haven't put any up lately because as you can see, there's stuff everywhere. We've been very, very fucking busy. We're actually scaling and growing the shop now. We've got a few more guys starting in the coming months. You'll see that we've changed the way we do things. We don't really do small jobs anymore. If you follow what we do, a lot of it is big stuff like this, like the Lincoln, like the F-150, the big Cadillac that we're actually building, and we'll get round to them in other videos, but I don't really do day in, day out stuff. The reason for that, and there's a lot of shops that do, and that's fucking awesome, and they do really good jobs. I don't, because I like to be able to take my time, think about stuff like this car, this Nissan has been with me for over a year now, and obviously it's gone from, you know, a few weeks worth of work to fucking 2 years of build, but I like to be able to put my time into it, and I like to not be under too much pressure because I don't want to rush shit. So if you watch my Instagram or you know me directly, or even if you've got a car with me and you're thinking, fuck me, this guy's taking the piss. We're not. That's it. Me personally, I like being able to do things right. And if I don't know how to do it correctly, best believe I'll go and learn. I won't just bullshit it and hope that it's going to do what I think it will do. I will actually look into it. And that's the thing as a speed shop. Are we very experienced in what we do? Yes. Are we the best? No. But the only way you get better is by doing stuff like this and learning how it works and what doesn't. So we've gone into quite a lot of detail with this car today, and we're going to do the same throughout the rest of the year. And we're going to put in some educational videos, if you like. So I quite often get asked, what settings do you use? How do you weld this? How do you weld that? What equipment do you use? And we'll go through all of it. It's a journey. So this is a project for me. It's a YouTube story for me. It's how the guy that started fixing cars at a very young age, I think it was 13 when I first started, has come to where I am now, and have I made fuck ups along the way? Absolutely. Have I pissed people off? Absolutely. Do I work every day to make that better and try and heal relationships and keep all of my customers happy? Yes. If it means I have to work late, then I'll do it. If it means I have to, like the Lupo, if it costs me money to put it right, I'm going to do it because I'm human at the end of the day. I'm Chris, this is Hard Knocks. Welcome to my world.